This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad and live today. It can't be reiterated enough that this wonderful country we live in is built on the firm foundation of freedoms. Freedom to speak our minds, freedom to elect officials into office, freedom to do and act as we choose, freedom to worship our God. These freedoms guarantee us the right to participate in activities without having to be concerned that we will be persecuted for our actions or for our beliefs. So because we are able to enjoy these freedoms, we celebrate our country's independence each and every 4th of July. We watch parades and have picnics. We grill out and we swim. We eat juicy watermelon and admire fireworks exploding in the night sky as orchestras play the patriotic hymns that we've come to enjoy. The 4th of July is that day created for us to relax and to celebrate these freedoms we cherish as citizens of the United States of America. A memorable 4th of July for me was when I was working one summer at a church camp. Now, our celebrations checked off all the traditional boxes of things to do, but then just as the sun began to set, as the campers began to migrate back to their cabins for the night, I was informed that the camp staff would be leaving to go watch the fireworks. Awesome, I thought, but who's going to be watching the campers while we're gone? And that's when it was revealed to me that I had been selected for that role. I would be one of the someones who would watch over the camp. Wow. I was kind of disappointed. Not disappointed that I wasn't going to see the fireworks, because I've seen plenty of fireworks in my lifetime. I was more bummed that I wouldn't be hanging out with the rest of the camp staff, building upon the relationships and friendships and sharing an experience with them. So naturally, when everyone returned from their night out, laughing and joking and sharing inside stories and scrolling through their camera rolls full of selfies, I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun, but I'm sure it doesn't even compare to all the fun I had here tonight, as I consoled the kid who was crying for his mom, as I reprimanded those rowdy kids for trying to sneak out of their cabins, as I cleaned up after the poor kid who regurgitated his hot dog and his baked beans all over himself and his sleeping bag. We all have experienced at one time or another that crummy feeling of not being included, of being left out, of having that Cinderella moment when we're not invited to the ball. When things like this happen, I usually attribute it to the classic line of thinking, well, I guess the invitation got lost in the mail. Now, my lack of inclusion on that 4th of July night was clearly not because of spite, and it didn't have any kind of origin in malice. It was purely because someone had to stay behind. But if you take all the reasons to not be included and you ranked each one of them, I would say that the worst reason to not be included would be because you're just plain forgotten. Because you don't matter. No one cares about you. You are an afterthought. That has to be the worst. Luckily for us, Jesus comes to take our absolute worst, and he turns those moments into our absolute best. He says, enough of all that, enough of not being included, enough of not mattering, enough of not being cared for, enough of being forgotten. Just enough. For the reality of God's world is that everyone is welcome. Everyone's included. Everyone gets an invitation to participate in his benevolent kingdom. The only requirement is that we have belief. Belief that Jesus died on behalf of you. Belief that his resurrection put an end to death forever. Belief that these promises are given unconditionally and abundantly. Belief that we are children of God that belong to God. Everyone is included. I challenge you to find one person that Jesus denies, ignores, or excludes, because you can't. Jesus welcomes sinners, tax collectors, prostitutes, lepers, paralytics, those who are possessed by demons, religious leaders, Jews, Gentiles, and everyone in between. But the strongest act of inclusion comes on the cross. This story is one of my favorites because of the power that is behind it. As Jesus is crucified next to two bandits, one of these bandits turns to Jesus and he says, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Now, without hesitation, Jesus says to him, "Truly, today you will be with me in paradise." Notice Jesus doesn't say, "Okay, well, maybe let me think about it." No, of course not. Instead, he says yes to the man with a past that is so checkered that he finds himself nailed to a cross. Jesus tells this man that he too matters, that he is a child of God, loved by God, and that the promises of grace and mercy are for him as well. We are welcomed by Jesus, and now we ought to reciprocate that love and be welcoming to others. We read in the Gospel of Matthew today these words from Jesus: "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me." Jesus breaks down walls and barriers so that we have the freedom to associate with all people, regardless of whatever label society has slapped upon them. He gives us the freedom to witness to people who are our family and who are our best friends, but also to those that we have absolutely nothing in common with. He gives us the freedom to live in confidence that sin and death have been defeated and that we are welcomed into his house, into his family, into his kingdom. Nothing blocks us and prevents us from experiencing his benevolence and love and the life that is rooted in his resurrection. But it's the last portion of our text for today which really strikes me. Jesus says this, "And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of those will lose their reward." So don't just welcome others with words, but use actions as well. It can be as simple as offering a cup of water. It can be as complicated as cleaning up a soiled camper and his sleeping bag. If we have a God that is willing to be welcoming to all of his children all of the time, even though we are prone to find trouble, even though we make mistakes, even though we neglect our neighbor, act selfishly, and sometimes ignore God's commands, well, shouldn't we follow suit and mirror that same hospitality that God has for us? It only makes sense. Our invitations have not been lost in the mail. We are included. We are loved. We are welcomed. May we be a part of the hospitable equation and extend the welcoming invitation to others as well. Amen. Remember as you go about your day that yesterday is gone, tomorrow does not yet belong to you. So why not live today, knowing that you never walk alone? We will see y'all next week. Later.